Jordi, welcome again. This is our second episode. After the first one, I think we enjoyed talking. That's why we're back for the second. And I just want to remind the people who are watching us that who we are, firstly. So my name is Swapnil Kashyap, and I have been in this industry space for about 25 years and working specifically with this SaaS product called PEGA for the last 18 years. And I've seen a lot of implementations. We've been to the clients, and we want to talk about resistance and implementation. So two different topics, but they are very much related to each other. And yeah, we just wanted to make sure that the message goes out to you and help people outside the two of us, helping the community. So, Jordi.
Yeah, well, thank you, Samil, for organizing it. Last episode was, for me, was brilliant to speak about, and this, yeah, I can't wait for the second one. My introduction, my name is Jordi, and yeah, I have 8 years of experience on CDH. So that's me, and yeah, I'm happy here to communicate for the audience.
So we are talking about engagement of any SaaS product into the organization, starting with the moment the salespeople walk in and they hand it over to the implementation team when the delivery people come in, because they're the experts in making sure that the SaaS products such as PEGA start getting implemented. So I want to start talking about the moment the engagement happens, because there are a lot of expectations being built between the client community and, of course, the execs, right? So let's assume that an organization thinks about, we'll just pick up a normal situation like digital transformation, right? It can be anything about, let's get our website personalized, let's get our campaigns personalized, let's talk about revamping the customer services because the agents have got a lot on the plate. They're not able to make recommendations to the client. It's kind of not the best right now. So we're talking about an engagement with a client, right? Any SaaS product organization walks in, and they would start off with promising your NPS is going to be improved by X%. Your customer services team are going to be making recommendations which are much more personalized, much more relevant to the customer. Or you would probably see an engagement through your digital channels raised by X% again. So that's the kind of promises some of the sales engagement people do with the clients. So now, have you kind of come across that sort of promises? And when you go in, say, let's talk about walking in an implementation, that point of time, people always quote you that, by the way, we were told this, but are we on track to receiving that uplift, or why is it just not matching? What's your...
Yeah. Well, I think that first I was involved, but not directly. I was more involved in showcase the PEGA application to demonstrate that, let's say, PEGA can be a product of their interest. So I think that in this case, I really think that when the client wants to find the right product, right, to fulfill their needs, let's say they want a digital transformation, but for which kind of client? Let's say it can be, I don't know, flight, or it can be electricity provider, or it can be anything, and they have data around their applications, and they want to centralize this data, right? So I think that at this point, maybe the client wants to find the right product to seize their needs. And at that point, like a salesperson, that should be really, really concrete, and it should be really skilled, to be honest. I think that it's a role that can be challenging. But what I did is that I participated on these talks, and also during the implementation phase of, let's say, the first use case, I also participated on that, which is a little bit of challenging also, because the first use case yeah, should show result, right? Let's imagine a client that has expectations, right? Because they just acquired a new product to fulfill their needs. As said, in this case, the client needs something. It's a product. It's a use case. Needs to see the value of that, right? I think that this is important to be aligned first with the salesman, with the team that behind it, and also with the business, of course. So it's a little bit of a triangle of communications, and everybody needs to be aligned. I think. I don't know, but what do you think? Do you think that?
I think this is probably right. So, and it's a good thing that you mentioned about the triangle of understanding. So, at one point, is the actual sales organization or the vendor? Let's just put it as the vendor selling their SaaS product, right? Which can achieve a certain goal for the organization. And on one side of this triangle, there's the execs who are expecting that change, right? That this is the management that's trying to bring in this level of enhancement to their business. And on the other side, it's the actual team that tries to get the expectation from what was sold to what the execs actually want done. Now, within this team, and I would say that you have to separate out. So when we talk about implementation team, it's not really the team of engineers who go in. It's really the people who help drive that change. So this could be anywhere. This is the delivery organization, all of it. So which would be, in this case, the head of decisioning, it could be the head of engineering, it could be the CRM people, the director of CRM, it's everyone, including all of the architects and the engineers and everyone who's involved, which is sitting maybe on the right side of the triangle. So what's
Yeah,
important
right.
is, and this always channels through. So I've been asked questions from the management, from the exec team is, a certain percentage had been promised. That was the original use case when the sales team presented to us. How does that not match? Or the question could be reframed saying that, how could we make sure that matches? Now, it's because this is a triangle, everyone talks to each other. It's kind of a matrix, everyone talks to each other. So, of course,
Yeah.
the management would be expecting that the product stands up to its to what it says on the tin, but also that we need to start talking to the vendors and the exec as well. Was your need sold effectively? Was it oversold? What have you understood about the product? Does it is it even the right product for the purpose that you're seeking? Because if you walk in, I've walked into organizations where they are probably expecting, and this was an older version of let's say even PEGA, is they're expecting that it can send out emails. It's an email tool, right? That can create beautiful emails. Obviously, that wasn't the case. And of course, now PEGA are moving into that direction. But the question really is about what's the remit of the tool given where we are? And is the expectation
Exactly.
of the tool beyond what it can deliver? And if that's the case, what really happens is the both the product vendors and the delivery team fall flat on the commitment to the execs. And in most of these cases, the execs who are making those decisions, they're making those financial decisions, the go-ahead decisions, or even to continue with this initiative. Because the last thing people want is burning their money, burning in the funds on something that isn't yielding results. So, and this is where the
Yeah.
first part we're talking about is really the engagement versus the expectation. In fact, both these things actually go together. Should be right from the first place. There should be no overselling. And this is where Jordi mentioned about the salesperson has to be really good at what they do. And part of being good at what you do is setting up the right expectations in the first place.
Yeah, right. And let me add also that well, one thing that you add that you mentioned before is the overselling, right? So of course we have a product and we are specialized in this product. This product has these capabilities from 0 to 100. Let's say you cannot sell something that it's 200. It's over. Let's say, but in this case, but neither don't remove value, neither, because I really think that PEGA compared to the other competitors, it's quite really accomplishing all the sophistication that the client might have, right? So these individual parts that the client might need, it's giving the value to them. But of course, in order that to happen, the communication between business, developers, sales, everybody needs to be aligned and needs to be written down and spoken and so on. But it's interesting. It's interesting because it really, if that happens, the orchestration between it and seeing the result really fast, it can at completion and can give a prompt value to the client. I really think that to this to happen, the first steps needs to be really small and give a huge value to the client, let's say. So, what do you think about that?
Well, that actually takes us very well to the second part of what we're going to talk about, which is the use cases. The
Okay.
value is in the use case, and in fact, to an extent, we talk about micro journeys, we talk about MVPs. And I just want to touch upon this part: is how do you get the value shown to the client? The first thing, that's the first thing, right? Fastest value first. So now you may have heard about some use cases which are important, right? That's important to make sure that we are moving in a direction which is expected of why we brought the product. But on the other side, there's always use cases which are far from the perfect fit that we initially spoke about, which the product can deliver. And this is where some of the overhyped use cases or the dulling of the wow factor starts coming in. So I want to maybe maybe touch upon a topic where I was in a gambling industry, online entertainment, and it's a very high paced industry. I mean, much of the industries are high paced, but nothing can be as high paced as somebody, lots and lots of, well, thousands, tens of thousands of customers playing, say, online slot games. And where is the right place for a high speed transaction? So of course you can put a product through a high speed decisioning type transaction where you're getting constant requests through and through from one customer. Like there could be multiple requests, I would say, within a matter of minutes. And then a system has to deal with not just one customers with so many requests, but also many, many customers sending those requests. And it could happen that a session for a customer can last in for, maybe over half an hour. So imagine if you relate this to an industry such as telecommunication. Somebody goes in and they're interacting with a website. Could a session last for over 30 minutes? I mean, which could be a high speed, non-stop demand for the next best offer. So maybe those use cases are very valid. The questions that we could have, and I had at that point of time, is how do you deal with this non-stop barrage of requests coming in, and how do you deal with it with a speed that it justifies putting this much effort into the system and getting the results at the right time. I mean, think of this example again in a different way. Let's say you've got 15 minutes, and 15 minutes is actually the half time in a football match. So you've got 15 minutes. How can you pick up every possible customer who's placed a bet and send them an offer or a reminder? That is through a specific product. And I'm talking about PEGA in this case. Is that achievable? Maybe it's achievable. What do you think? It's achievable. Is that like between the hype and reality, or is it more hype, less reality?
Yeah, I really think that it can be achievable, but in the condition that the client has this, let's say it's not a one-person job, or let's say it needs to be involved all the things, because for instance, talking about decisioning, if we want to send communications, we need content. That's for sure. So usually when a client does not have the PEGA install and they want to go straight to decisioning, in my opinion, there should be like a content side, right? That can be internal or external from PEGA. If we want to send the first use case, taking into account that there are a lot of demand and a lot of traffic in the website, and that's important. We need to be sure that the communication between PEGA and content and vice versa is aligned and the structure is there. If it's not, then I would say let's make the, let's say, happy path first. Let's build the happy path first, right? So once the customer, maybe in the case that you said, I don't know, customer it's logging in and it's an SBS action should appear in the web. Some containers needs to appear in the website or in the email, let's say. This thing, it can be accomplished, of course. I would use, let's say, out-of-the-box rules in this case, right? Because you don't need to tweak something. Tweaking things, eventually it's time-consuming. So why not using the out-of-the-box functionalities like real-time containers or real-time operations, and make the product operate itself. So that's, I would say, that's the first, let's say, the first use case, or in the initial steps, the client can use that, right? The real-time events, real-time containers, and so on.
Yeah.
I remember, for instance, I was working in a flight industry, and of course, one of the first use cases that maybe the client wants to see the value, it's to send booking confirmations. And that's probably the path of sending this kind of emails needs to be fast also, right? Because client expects to book a flight, let's say from that direction from point A to point B in these specific dates, and then he or she expects an email with the booking confirmation, right? So that should be like really fast. So yeah, I think that if all the teams are being aligned and all teams are knowing what to do, it can be done.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's a way to look at it. So, in a sense, what you've said is build a use case based on what is possible. Maybe just give a proof of concept to start with that explores the capability of the product, and then you start kind of meeting the expectations of the actual customers who are going to use it. Like the example you gave about sending an email. So that should be a part of it, and the email should appear relatively quicker rather than an email that's getting stuck in, say, because of slow moving data or maybe slow email services provider. So again, as a part of this transformation, even if you're talking about micro journeys, that micro journey should be complete in itself. If you're talking about a new booking, there should be a booking, then there should be the check about emails, then that itself should work very well. Would that be right? Is that what you kind of had in mind?
Yeah, exactly. Of course, the first framework needs to be a sense needs to be set up, and what you said. Also adding that the first use case needs to bring value to the client also. So it's one of the fundamentals part, I'd say, to bring some positivism or change the way of seeing, change the way to do marketing, let's say, in decision insight. If the first use case it's in regards of case types, or so set up like a proper framework, a proper layer, something that is really, really needed for the client. It can give benefits like money or not, but to have value, to bring value, I'd say.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and the value should really be measured by any sort of KPIs that have been set up, objectives that's been set up. And there's a continuous need to monitor how any initiative is working, be it whether it's a campaign management system, whether it's, in fact, if you're doing insurances, right? So how the case is moving, whether you're able to finish a certain number of cases or the journey end to end, how long does it take for any case to finish. I mean, it might take a long time because people aren't clear, people aren't including the documentation where they're supposed to. So there's a lot of challenges that need to be met. However, now I just want to move on to things about, let's say the use cases have been initially decided, but there's always a period where people feel, okay, this product works in a certain way. It's almost like when something comes in. I kind of remember this time when any product, in fact, even PEGA was being sold as having so CDH is called as a brain. And I walked into a client and they said, "Oh, it's an AI, it's a brain." So we weren't calling this AI at that point of time. The expectation which came out from some people, maybe who were not very close initially to what the product does, or maybe they were never part of the committee who were sort of sold this concept. They came and said this tool is going to be extremely brilliant, and this tool is going to magically make decisions like give the next best offer. So that expectation was a very high expectation to have in the first place. It's almost like because they didn't understand what was the reality, the reality check was missing. And because the reality check was missing, they started coming up with these hypothetical scenarios on how a certain product can help them. In fact, even if you look at, say, some of the now we're talking about the classical AI. This PEGA CDH is just very classical runs of machine learning. Even if you talk about modern AI, which is all LLM and models driven. Now, if you talk about a certain model is going to help you suddenly become 100% more productive, right? Or it's going to change the way your organization works completely, and that expectation is set incorrectly, then what's going to happen is that organization or that bunch of individuals are actually setting themselves up for failure. So the most important thing is setting the expectation right in the remit of what this product or service has been brought in for. And this is why not having this, what really brings in is resistance starts kicking in from the people who are supposed to in fact help make this initiative go from start to finish. So have you encountered any sort of resistance from any group to any initiative that you've been looking at, whether PEGA or outside?
What do you mean about resistance?
So resistance would be is, let's say people are saying, oh, by the way, PEGA should already do that. That's one of the ways to look at it. Or why is the product not working in a certain way? And then what happens is walls start building up. Or they could be things like, even channels being opened. So if is the confidence on the reliability and developability of PEGA, right? So it can sort of develop these use cases without maybe a lot of data, for example, right? People might ask, why do you need all of this data, right? So you seem to have a desire to get so much data, but you aren't actually coming up with any offers at all. And you can't meet those use cases. So this is where the resistance starts coming in from maybe various organizations. And this builds upon many layers. So which means if the initial technical people start showing resistance, then their managers and their bosses start seeing and building up the same type of wall. So that's the kind of resistance I'm kind of referring to.
I mean, in many cases, I saw then these in so many clients. One thing that I've encountered is that usually in PEGA we have a lot of data, right? So we have customer data, we have account, we have this, we have that. All the time, let's say, sometimes business is not aware about how many data does this is stored in PEGA. So the possibilities to create use cases to extend their logical, their let's say offer orchestration, or build maybe a use case that it may be beneficial. They are not aware, because firstly, as we know, once we start with the client and we go for the first use case, and then we just, okay, let's finish. It's finished. It's in production now, and it's nice to see it. But of course, there should be a continuation in here, like a follow up. Okay, now maybe let's build this, let's build that, let's build all of that. So there is a big planning right ahead during the years. But once, let's say, a project it's a little bit mature, so it's maintaining itself. There is a team that is getting involved and in creating use cases, in bug fixing, in creating like a better relationship with business and so on. Always there is this resistance saying, oh, this is not supposed like to work on this way. Maybe we can do it in another way. Okay, let's change it up. But also it's something that, and I found it in a lot of situations, saying, probably since we did this, I expect that all of this is working in the same way. It's like, no, we need to classify, we need to say, okay, this, let's say, case is working, but maybe the other case needs to be like, work upon also. So there are a lot of improvements once you start. PEGA can do a lot of stuff, of course, but there should be a team dedicating, let's say, full time, right, to maintain and to work on the other use cases and to make the product grow. I'd say, yeah, I talk about a lot of stuff, let's say, data, and also make the product grow and so on. So yeah, it depends a little bit on the team, the project itself, and the way how the project it's being shown to the market also.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because when you say about the optics of, say, how the project is being shown or maybe being perceived by either the market or basically external people external to the project. So this could be stakeholders, both internal and external. And one of the bits I've seen about, say, even resistance is, and I can kind of give a bit of experience, is about, I mentioned about opening up channels through PEGA. So there was this question about we were not going to open these channels up. So we had like an email channel, and then we were talking about web and SMS and push and all those different channels. And what really happened was there was low trust in PEGA's ability to filter out, let's say, customers who could end up being, we could end up breaching compliance. So, for example, in a gambling industry, we don't want to target under 18s, very simple things like that. Or there are certain offers, maybe in banking, you may want to check for eligibilities of, income earners and credit checks. And there's so many different checks that deal with regulation. So the question is, and those are very, very good challenges that external stakeholders can actually put towards you. The biggest question, and this is the thing about resistance, is it's not about that they are resisting for the sake of resisting it. They're resisting because maybe you haven't convinced them otherwise. And the only way to convince people is to make sure that you've got fact-based data. So, what I mean by that is, let's say we're talking about a certain segment of customers. We're saying that they've been validated, they've got the same source as some of your other systems, and we were dealing with Telium as well. So Telium and PEGA, in that instance, had the same source of data, but Telium had all these channels open to web and SMS, but PEGA unfortunately wasn't. Now, it's a question of compliance. If it's the same source of data, then the system itself cannot generate any more data. They cannot select any more customers than an alternate tool is doing if the source of information is the same. So this is how you start addressing it. And the second part to addressing people's challenges is almost trying to make them understand is, well, okay, resistance and uncertainty is one thing. If we prove their concerns through some of the research that we've done, then the next question would be is, if they delay, let's say all the compliance has been met, if they delay the let's say the productionizing of any a system that we are kind of working towards, then there's going to be delay in go to market or the product being available to the customer. So if you can't do that, then you're not making money. The organization isn't making money. So that resistance has to actually have a reason, and a valid enough reason from both the sides, right? So if we convince, then there has to be a reason that should stand. If the reason still stands, then yes, I mean, we need to understand that and work towards it. But this resistance has to be met in a very structured way, based on our understanding, our research,
Yeah.
and obviously an ability to convince people.
Yeah, indeed. And I want to add also that usually who knows better the product, it's sometimes I feel like the developer itself, once you build the logic inside it, of course, you explain the logic and you document everything and so on. Once it's brought down in live, then you might start thinking, oh, what's good for the client? Maybe you know, as you mentioned, right? So maybe there are only two channels enabled. Maybe it's going to be better to have 4 channels enabled, and I don't know, the usage of their own website, or having this kind of email, or have you checked the regulations and so on. So eventually, I think that the function of let's say the MBA designer role, it's also to have a proper communication with business and convince them that this is the right path to acquire more value, to acquire more image or financials, let's say, depending on what they want to see. And yeah, another topic that you mentioned is that sometimes when starting, let's say, a new channel from the beginning, of course, it might be a little bit, it's a new thing. Every new thing requires time. So it can require time to go to prod, let's say, but the path and the result after that, I think that it works well. It's worth it. I was in a client that they wanted to. Well, we as a development team, we wanted to have more channels open and to have more ways to communicate to the client. We felt the need to be as a salesperson also with the business stakeholders and say, oh, I think that this can be worth it. So let's try it out. And we tried it. We tried it out, and you make it, you know, the product itself made it better. Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes it's actually a close relationship between the people who are actually working on the product and the people who are intended to manage those people who are working. So it's a kind of relationship based on trust, knowing that the people actually understand the capabilities of the product and you know, to heed that advice. If people sometimes try to pressure people into, say, developing certain things, then mistakes can be made, and it's kind of something that everyone need to be aware of. That allowing the engineers enough time to research, and also trusting people about their on their recommendations as well. What is possible, what is not. Yeah, what features work well. In fact, what don't, and that's one of the biggest things to be aware of. So I think this is where I think you spoke about the concept, putting the concepts to work, going down to the actual people who are doing the work itself, the architects themselves, the engineers, the testers. So in a typical organization, so if you go in, do you sort of think about, is there a recommended setup that you'd say is required for a project? Let's say a PEGA project, a decisioning project, case management project. what would you think the team setup should be? Should be big? Should it be small team? And how do you make sure that everyone is kind of geared to do their own tasks in terms of
Mhm.
training?
It's a really good question. I think that what's best and what's the desire of let's say a client needs to spend less, spend few, and have good quality of work. Let's say, right. So in order to acquire that and that's let's say a little bit the legacy of what I am now, let's say, and Anamata. So it's to provide, let's say, quality. Um, so of course we have some organizations sometimes that they acquired, let's say, a client, and after um, there are like 6, 10 people like working on this use case. I think that sometimes uh, the quantity of employees can affect to the result because if we have, like, let's say, a team or members that they know exactly what to do and how to manage that and how to deal with problems and so on because they have XYZ experience already in the past. Um, with one person or two people maximum, I think that it's enough to establish a role of confidence and linkage with the client, let's say, right? So once there, if there are more resources needed, then of course let's talk about it. But depending on a little bit on the on the client itself. But usually, from my point of view, if the client wants to start, like in the very initial steps, usually the first use case it really should be really easy, really fast, really easy, really fast to show value and so on. So for that, to have one team member or two team members that they have enough experience to solve every inch of a issue, let's say, that would be enough, in my opinion. Because yeah, and putting myself into the client side, you need to build trust, confidence, and so on with the customer, with the consultancy, let's say, or with you, or whomever it is. So spending too much without having trust and so on, it's a little bit difficult on client side. But if there is less risk and the results are proven, it can be beneficial for both parts, let's say. So starting point would be, in my opinion, and what I found in the past, let's say, is that 1, 2 people maximum, and then go ahead and see the output of all of it, and then if you need more resources, then start hiring and so on. But I really see a lot of people involved in the first use case, and that was not really bad. So I think that it's too much communication sometimes can bring gaps and issues and so on, and delays probably. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
I think so. Yeah. So obviously you can't over engineer the solution by having a lot of people, and you can also make a project go faster by having putting twice the number of people. So there's always a balance, and the way I see this as any organization trying to build something new, either they can train their own team, which is the in-house team, to do certain things, or they can get freelancers in. The benefit with freelancers is they have, say, more control over what they deliver, what work is assigned to them. There's a cap on the cost as well because getting freelancers is cheaper, obviously more expensive than in-house people. And the third model is the agency model, where there are there's a lot of boutique agencies or specialized vendors who deal with decisioning. And there's a lot out there. Obviously, the cost is there's not going to be cost saving compared to the other models, but again, the output is going to be very, very structured because they've got a view into maybe some of the competitors as well, some of the other clients they've worked with. With freelancers, of course, you're only limited to what the experience of that freelancer is, and every freelancer is different. So it's not as if you're going to get five freelancers, they're all going to be knowing each other. But of course, when there's going to be five people from a company, they're probably going to know each other. But then there's still a balance between how much experience each of these models brings into the organization. Sometimes what happens with a vendor or an agency based approach is they show you the A star employees first, but then eventually swap them over with C star employees for
Yeah.
doing the work. And that's the challenge that people have to really be mindful of. And I've seen that happen quite a lot. But again, with freelancers, you just hire whomever you want. So this is something that people, clients, organizations, any organization need to worry about. It's not even limited to PEGA related work. It's general, it's industry wide challenge. Training, of course, the in-house people need to be trained. When you're looking at external people, they definitely need to know their craft. But when you're talking about ensuring that ultimately what they build comes inside the organization, then you're talking about both the agencies and the freelancers sitting with internal staff, upskilling them so that ultimately the productivity increases. To start with, whatever number of people an organization chooses, it's always best to start with a minimum number. And I'd say the best way to start is always do a proof of concept, make sure it works, start going forward from that point onwards. That can be MVP, then it can be multiple streams in parallel, and then it can be, full project. So I just want to touch upon now, because we've started talking about people coming in, they start obviously doing these little bits and pieces of work going on to full scale implementation. What are the struggles that you've seen during implementations and any sort of delays, maybe related to quality or choosing the paths of least resistance? What's your view on the actual implementation itself, and maybe some shortcuts you might have had to
Yeah,
make?
that's a really nice question also. Um, yeah, I think that it's a common thing. What happens usually is that let's imagine an organization taking care about a product itself, and for X, Y, or Z reasons, this organization does not reach to the level that the client wants. Right? That can happen also. That can happen. The client wants for this week to be done this task, for the next week this task, this other task, and so on. So they have a planning also. They should have a planning, a long-term planning and a short-term planning. That's fine. Let's imagine that an organization does consulting, right? This consulting that we talk about, a lot of people in the project. There can be a lot, you know, misalignments and so on. So eventually, these organizations usually they quit or they leave working with the client. So the client, of course, they are in the middle of, okay, now we are in the middle of development. We need to find another resources. We need to find another clients, and that's cost of employees. So that is why it's important, and as you mentioned, to acquire first professionals, and then you can go with juniors or more, maybe more senior roles and so on. And yeah, that's going um, to have less time, or so to acquire less time for the client, and of course less financially stuff. So I was in a situation that that we acquired a client and everything was being done work. So the work was done, but the work, so it was done, but of course the work can be done in different ways, right? So it can be done in a way that using the best practices, bigger best practices, commenting everything. You open a rule and you understand everything, right? And sometimes it does not happen. And of course, it was quite challenging. But yeah, eventually, step by step, we needed to do a lot of refactoring. So that means like changing the way of working, providing the same input. So providing the same output. So the result of it would be exactly the same as it was, but behind the scenes, of course, internally, and PEGA, everything was more clear, more understanding, a better solution, and so on. Of course, that does not give a proper value for the client, so we needed to switch between refactoring and providing some value, because you cannot spend 6 months or 3 months refactoring things without providing any value. Should be like continuous development and continuous improvement, right? Did you find any situation like that?
That is very much true. In fact, you've kind of mentioned the right thing. Is refactoring is maybe one aspect of it, which is about making things run optimally in the background. This kind of boils down to the actual quality itself. So, given, and I just want to talk about this from a little higher level than actual implementation, is given two sets of people that you cannot necessarily say that one's going to be better than the other. However, organizations as a whole, when you start sort of wrapping this up, the consistent choice of people that they make of hiring, right? If there's an organization that's always focusing on lower cost, what's going to happen is they'll start making these decisions about shortcuts, for example, right? They'll consistently hire people who underdeliver, who've not been, trained well, who've never been exposed to best practices, who've never dealt with in a client-facing role, who've never been challenging enough, right? Never challenged the clients or the requirements enough. And they always believe in, say, the client says this requirement, let's just develop it the way they've suggested, rather than try to recognize that that's not the right way to even approach a certain use case. So those are the mistakes I think some organizations make. But some organizations are always ahead in their A game, right? They always hire the people, they always train the people, they always make sure that they put the best people forward, and those best people stay with the client so that there's a consistent delivery. And when there's a need, only then swap out. Maybe they renegotiate. For example, pricing has been renegotiated. They might put a little bit of a junior person, but again, with an understanding that this junior person is now good enough to continue the work, because it's a slow burn project, maybe gone into BAU. So those are some of the decisions good vendors make versus how decisions bad vendors make. So I just want to be clear that here again to the people who are watching us, or who would be watching us later on, is there's no individual good person or bad person. Everyone is trying to do their best. Everyone's trying to be their best. But it starts rolling down when, again, I mean, if you start, for example, we are having a chat, right? We are trying to learn from each other. We are trying to make ourselves better. And if our viewers, if you're part of this community, you'll try to become better. So it's almost like going back to the same saying that's always floating around. Is a person who's using AI better than you, or not? So I'm going to take this a step forward. Is if you're in this community, you're definitely going to be better than people who are not in any community, who are not kind of putting themselves out in, say, harm's way. They're not learning. They're not interacting. So this is how people grow, and this is where we want our community to be. So Jordi, I just and this is going to be the last topic for today. So we want to talk about struggles with vendors and maybe budget overruns, maybe something you can talk from either a client perspective or from a vendor perspective or from a freelancing perspective. Have you ever had struggles with maybe other vendors, or yourself being part of the vendor? Have you ever seen a struggle in any way, shape, or form, which is related to delivery and obviously not being able to meet budgets assigned by the clients?
Well, of course, clients usually have their expectations, and the team has a capacity. Expectations versus capacity needs to be aligned every time, but sometimes it's very, very difficult, even if and more if there are rotations, let's say. But for, let's say, situations, clients and teams that they usually do not have rotation because they very well work together and have like an impact together. Um, Usually the budget issue is not appearing in these cases. Um, it can happen if there is a high expectation on one part, let's say on client side, because maybe they want to they think that maybe they can acquire like a product in less time, and the capacity and the team, let's say, expects this product in more time, let's say, or in the contrary way also. It can happen that there is a benefit also for the client, right? So sometimes what the client says that it's difficult, maybe it's not difficult, maybe it's really easy to implement because PEGA out of the box functionality give this resource because it's thought to to run by this way, to operate by this way. So sometimes yes, it can happen that there is that the client needs to spend more money because X, Y, Z reason, because maybe there is someone that left the team and it wasn't expected. So some you know expectations can happen also, but in the contrary way also, they can plan something wrong, experiencing that something it's really really expensive to do, and it's not because maybe there is enough capacity and there is enough effort, and it depends, I guess, that how you build the design also and how you build what we mentioned before, the best practices. If you accomplish that and make things reusable, probably you can apply something really fast. But if starting the implementation is really, really sophisticated and really, really personalized, then of course you want to do something similar. You need to rebuild a lot of stuff. So yeah, it can be both ways, I'd say.
I think from what you're trying to suggest here is with better planning, any sort of issues regarding budget overruns can be avoided. So if you do it in a better way with best practices, something which might seem complex but could be very simple to implement, that would avoid any challenges. What I want to start to convey from my experience is sometimes budget overruns can happen. Again, this is due to poor planning, and poor planning could be is when a client expects a requirement, right? And because of lack of knowledge from somebody, what happens is they either underestimate in certain way, right? In which case, who's going to struggle in this case? The vendor itself or the system integrator, whoever is involved in it. So if they underestimate for some reason for a fixed price contract, they would have to deliver it irrespective because that's found a contract. But what happens if they overestimate certain piece of functionality? And people are used to overestimating because they might say that, okay, and there have been instances where maybe just going back away from PEGA into the past, a single line of code, people code 4 hours, could be 4 days, for instance. And they would justify it very cleverly saying, oh, by the way, we have to test it, we'll have to release it, we have to roll it out. There's so many people involved in it. So people are just trying to bundle up so much into that single line of change is that ultimately leads up to budget overruns for the client. So somebody is going to suffer at any of the ranges, right? Extreme end of the ranges. So what's important here is for the people to be really realistic in what the right requirements are and what the right estimations are going to be to service those requirements. And if that happens, there's going to be no budget issue as such. And the estimation could be is do we need certain number of environments? Do we need, I mean, you could just scale up to however you want. You could scale up, you could scale down, talk about higher things in terms of the licensing cost, or you could talk in terms of, days and hours worth of work. And not doing that puts certain vendors under scrutiny. So if a vendor isn't able to support, by vendor I mean the system integrator, if they aren't able to support the specific asks, then they would be put on a spot, and then this is where everyone starts struggling. So the best thing is to understand what is the right approach to estimation, and really be seen as the trusted advisor at the end in terms of the overall community, you know.
Yeah.
So, Jordi, I mean, this is all we have time for. We've slightly overrun, I think, from a timing perspective, but from a content perspective, we've covered everything, and I'm quite glad that we got to speak again. What has your
Same,
experience
same.
been today? I mean, what you feel about today?
That's good. That's topics that are basically really important. And I think that they are not being spoken in the social network. So I think that it's they have a voice right now, and maybe they have. For sure, they're gonna have a lot of opinions. So I'd suggest that maybe the people who arrive to these minutes to leave a comment or to give their opinions, and of course to provide feedback also. Maybe to have a contradictory opinion also can be fine also. So that's fine.
Absolutely, yeah, and we welcome all of these comments and opinions. So if you want to be part of this community, for the people watching out there, I would recommend that you reach out to either me or Jordi. We'll have our LinkedIn QR codes. Feel free to comment on this video. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on LinkedIn. We want to speak to you, and you can also be one of the guests in a future episode. So this is the second episode, but we hopefully will be having more. We'll talk about interesting topics. So if you have a topic of your own, just let us know, and we are happy to talk with you on this topic. And here's to many more. All right. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jody.
Thank you.